Okay, so you could say here's one I prepared earlier. The 26 went in 2012. Bought it, it was in a 32 GTST before this car, so this is actually the third car this motor's been in. Pretty sure it was in a front ender. Possibly. Well, it had. I found out afterwards it had a blown turbo. The original plan was put a single on it. Never happened. Good set of R34 ball bearing twins came up, so I ran those all the way up until I just recently blew one of them. I've been running about 16-17 pound the whole time. Made 276 at the wheels, so it's pretty quick. Other than that, it's just got an IS tune, standard injectors, front mount, pretty basic setup. It's been good fun. It is absolutely filthy at the moment. I put a fan through the radiator a few years back and it made a big mess, and I just never cleaned it up. So yeah, I'm just going to drop the coolant while I'm out the front here before I take it in the shed and pull the other fluids out to get ready to pull the motor. It's probably also worth mentioning the reason that I'm doing this, choosing to do this with the motor out of the car, is there's a few other things I want to tidy up as well. So there's a cold start valve under the intake manifold that would just be a lot easier to replace with the engine out of the car, and obviously I'm going to pull all the factory oil and water lines for the turbos off, and yeah, just tidy up the whole water and oil system. So all of that will be heaps easier with the engine out. I've also bought some PTFE lines for my power steering as well, so I'll show you that now. As you can see, the power steering setup in this car, it works fine. It just has a slow weep, and it was just tossed together with random parts that I could find that fit. So yeah, I'll just tidy that up as well. Fit a bigger cooler on it. It's just got a little cooler at the moment. It does run a blow-off valve. It's a old Go Fast Bits one. It is a bit loud despite being recirculating. I'd prefer it to be quieter, but it is what it is. Unsure if I'll run it again. This catch can I kind of made myself a few years ago. As you can see here, this little bit snapped off. I just did it with like brazing rods and stuff, so I've got a new one of those to go in and some AN fittings for the breathers. While the motor's out, I'll just tidy up the engine bay like last time, because it's pretty filthy at the moment. So it's a bit of a tight fit. I've never actually reversed this in before, so it's going to be interesting. We'll see how we go. There it is. Wasn't running the best, but as you'd expect, it'll keep dripping forever. Obviously the thermostat's still in there, so the block's still full, but it's no big deal. It's a bit of a bonus. Just fits under the control arms by like a mil. That's good. The wheels are far enough apart, like the stand's narrow enough. The only problem is, because of this, this is lower than this. It's actually sitting on the front wheels at the moment, which might give us a bit of pain to pull out. I don't know if I'll need a board there, but we'll have a look. Okay, so last time I took the motor out, I did it at my dad's house, and he's got a nice patch of concrete out the back. It wasn't under shelter, but it wasn't as tight as this. I didn't take the bonnet off. I'm thinking I might this time, just because the light is right above it. It's just going to be a bit easier to see things, so I'll do that now. So we've got good visibility now, good lighting. So underneath, you've noticed I've put it up at the back. That's because I'm pulling it out, the motor out with the box. I've only ever replaced this, the Rb30 with the 26. It came out and in a couple of times. It's pretty straightforward. First things I'll do is get underneath it, take out the tail shaft, unbolt the exhaust, and then I'll just start unplugging things in the engine bay. So it's just basically unplug all the engine loom, take off your intercooler piping, take out the radiator. So that's what the drain plug out of the gearbox looks like. I guess that's to be expected, but there's no clips or anything, which is, I've heard, is a common thing with 33 gearboxes. This is actually a 34 GTT box. Here's what it is. Alright, so I'll start with the battery. Top radiator hose. This is actually a bottom radiator hose out of a mid-90s laser, I think. Okay, now I'll start taking off some of the cooler piping and the intake. Airflow meters. Fan, the shroud. Bottom rad hose. Doesn't look to be in too bad nick. There's plenty of rust in there. So fuel lines, there's a fair bit of fuel coming out of that. Normally I catch it in a can, but I'll take the rad out. Piece of intercooler piping with the recirc blow-off valve on it. There's the other half of the intercooler piping. Take the catch can out. It's got a three-way boost controller up here for my I've got an eBoost Street 2 boost controller, so it's a 3-port, sorry. Again, I'm just going to be using these hose pliers. That's just unclipping the oxygen sensor, the plugs. They were just tied into the body with clips there. I haven't been using those since I put in the engine, so I'll take a closer shot after, but there's some oil in the turbo outlets here. It's not insignificant, and there's also some oil in the inlet here, which is a little bit bizarre considering I didn't have any crank vent or anything going back in there, so turbos must have been well and truly dead. So you can see what a mess this power steering setup's done. Like I said, all of this was done back in 2012, and I didn't have the money behind me that I do now. You can see here, this is pretty dodgy. So this is the factory pump feed line, and this is literally clamped. This is a hose clamped onto a hose. I don't think that bottom hose was meant to hold power steering fluid, but hey, it's worked. It's messy. It's not ideal, but yeah, it is what it is. That actually came off a 626, I think, that hose. I'm just using the factory R32 GTR Hikus pump with the vanes removed from the rear section of the pump, so that's pretty simple. You just pull it apart. It's just got little stainless steel vanes. Take all those out, put the rotor back in, bolt it back together, and I've just got a bolt in there with a washer. So we're only using the front half of the pump. And I did buy a R33 Rb25 pump, which is a 3-groove, and that would have suited my alternator that came off an Rb30, but the rest of this motor is 4-groove, so for now I'm going to stick with that. Strop brace off. Gonna go ahead now and unplug the engine loom. Okay, so all the loom's off. I've just unplugged the starter motor, the alternator wires are off. I've just taken the slave cylinder off the box. All that's left to do now is loosen both the engine mounts, just one bolt each underneath. There's 2 bolts that hold the rear of the gearbox to the cross member, so I've got to take those off, and I've got to take the cross member off just so we can swing it around under there and have heaps of room. So I'll go ahead and take those off now. Alright, so at this stage I'm pretty sure I've taken off everything. The only thing holding the engine in the car right now is its own weight, and there's 2 bolts in the gearbox cross member. So I'm going to try and transfer some weight to the engine crane. I've got a bit of an engine leveler. It's pretty cheap, it's only a Chinese thing, but it works good. So I'm going to use that as well. And again, just bear with me with the angles. Don't know if you can hear it, but it's slightly raining at the moment, so It's limiting where I can put the camera, and it's pretty tight in this carport as well, so. Pro tip, take off your front pipe. Got this one with the engine, it's an RSR, it's a pretty cheap thing. Cheap as in it's not tuned length or anything. There we go. Flexing the rad support. That's what 31s are for. Alright, that all went pretty smoothly. If you liked that, make sure you subscribe, tune in for episode 2. We'll start stripping the engine down. Thanks guys.